So yeah, welcome back, my dear friends. Welcome back to Sinking UGC Psychology. Social psychology topics were going to be discussed. And last topic we are discussing about conformity. And we have seen why do we conform in different ways, normative, informative, etc. And levels of conformity like compliance, identification, and internalization. So today we'll see other forms of social influence like obedience, agentic state, social support, and minority influences. So what is obedience for that matter? So obedience is a type of social influence where a person follows an order from another person who is usually an authoritative figure. So one person would be authoritative figure, another one would be the who follows or obeys the instructions. So we have Milgram's shock study where Milgrams wanted to see whether people would obey a legitimate authoritative figure when given instruction to harm another human being. And results were so shocking where all participants went to and about 300 words and 65%, 60 to 65% were willing to go all the way to 450 volts. So when instructions were given to harm others. So Milgram did more than one experiment. He carried about almost 18 different variants of this study, where, here in the obedience, where they have gone almost 65% were willing to go all the way to 450 volts. So it means that an instructor will be there and a participant will be there, where instructor will tell this participant to different statements like prods, we say. So these different statements would be obeyed by the participant. And when this instructor is giving these instructions, so they will be willing to go beyond 300 volts. So this is something we call it as social influence, that is obedience, which we can see in Milgram's shock experiment. And one comes to the next type, that is agentic state. So according to agency theories, which says that people will obey an authority when they believe that the authority will take the responsibility for some action or consequences for the action. So this reported to be supported the theory of Milgram's evidence as well. So here, for example, in agency theory, agencies take, for example, when participants were reminded that they had responsibility for their own actions, almost none of them were prepared to obey. So it means that it is kind of a contrast or deviation. But in contrast, many participants were refusing to go on with so if the experimenter said that he would take the responsibility. So that's where another example you can see that agentic state involved a variation of Milgram's study whereby participant could instruct an assistant Confederate to press the switches. So in this condition, almost 90%, 90 to 92% shock to the maximum 450 volts. So this shows when there is less personal responsibility, obedience increases. So in this agentic state, we can understand that when an authority takes responsibility of their consequences of their actions, the participants are willing to obey much. So next, social support system. So in this social support system, where assess experimental variation, which is group conformity, where he showed that the presence of a distinct dissident, that is a Confederate who did not conform, led to decrease in the conformity levels of a true participant level. For example, let's let's take example of A, B, C, D. So within which true participant is D, right? A, B, C will be giving a false information, false responses, which actually in turn has an effect on the true participant. So this we will be seeing in Ash's experiment of the line study. A line study where we'll be able to see this experiment where most of the people would say that C is the biggest line actually. So though we know that the B is biggest of ABC, but due to the information given by other supporters, that the true participant responses also got changed. So this is about social support system. So our responses would change according to the social responses. And then coming to the minority influence. So minority influences occurs when a small group minority influences the opinion of a much larger group, that is majority. So this has got consistency, commitment, and flexibility. So these are the few ways that we see minority, how minority influences social, it has social influence. So let's see each of its significance. So consistency is stated that, according to this theory, consistent and unchanging in a view is more likely to influence the majority when if a minority is inconsistent and chops and changes their mind. So if there is any inconsistency, so they change the mind. So this is some minority influence. Coming to commitment. So when the majority is confronted with someone with self-confidence and dedication to take a popular stand and refuses to back on, they may assume that he or she has a point. So if I confront it, I am very much confident and I take a stand and again I go back to my own. So they assume that I had a point. So this has some minority influence on the group. And coming to flexibility, a number of researchers have questioned whether consistency alone is sufficient for minority to influence a majority. So flexibility where has got influence that a number of researchers have questioned whether the consistency alone is sufficient or not. So flexibility is questioned, and for example, some researchers have gone further and suggested that it is not just the appearance of flexibility and compromise which is important, but actual flexibility and compromise. This possibility was investigated by UnitVIII. So in their experiment was based upon mock jury in which groups of 3 participants and 1 confronted had to decide on amount of compensation has to be given to the victim of scale accident. So when the consistent minority, who is a confederate, argued for the very low amount and refused to change his position, he had no effect on the majority. So however, when he compromised and moved some way towards the majority position, the majority also compromised and changed their view. So it means that the flexibility, actual flexibility and consistency also will have a significant effect, that is nothing but minority influence. So these are the few social influences that we can study, that is minority influence social support, experiment deviation, and agentic state, obedience, and conformity, where these are the few social influences which we can study here. So, and these are all important for in the case of UGC is concerned. So these statements are important and definitions are important, which can be asked in correct or incorrect statements. So I hope this video is helpful for you, and hope I'll be coming with more of next topics, that is group dynamics and leadership style and effectiveness. Thank you.